Hello, fine folks, and welcome to Booghy Plays. This evening I am not playing, I am playing with questions again. And my guest tonight is a designer, and I am saying this because I don't know how many chances I will get to say it. He's a Kiwi, and I love saying that. Coming all the way from New Zealand, a designer which works with Shem Phillips a lot. They have some successful games out on the market. Also, he designed some games on his own. So I welcome to Booghy Plays Sam Macdonald. Welcome, Sam, and good morning.
Good morning and good evening to you. It's lovely to be here. Thanks so much for making the time to chat.
Of course, it is my pleasure of having you here. As I have told you, the interview is two parts. How is the weather now in New Zealand?
Well, it's been raining pretty badly over the last 2 or 3 weeks. We've had quite a bit of flooding, but as you can probably see, the sun is starting to come through, and it's getting my forehead, which is shining away brightly with the skylight there. I've got a blind, but it obviously doesn't work super well. So yeah, it's a nice day out in New Zealand.
It's the end of summer there.
Yeah, it is. End of summer, start of autumn. Yeah.
Start of autumn, yeah, there. Um, Different time zones, different different seasons, but same interests, and that's games. Let's talk a bit about you, mister. And let's start with the beginning. And my first question is, where were you born and where did you grow up?
Yeah, so I was born in Lower Hutt, which is just a little town or maybe city within Wellington City. Um, and I've lived there all my life. I still live in Lower Hutt. Uh,
That's New Zealand.
my childhood suburb was a place called Eastbourne, which was just such a privileged place to grow up. I was really blessed. There was the sea was nearby, so I did a lot of fishing and diving and things like that. But also there were hills right behind my house as well, so it was great for exploring and climbing and doing all sorts of outdoors activities. I've now moved from Eastbourne to another part of Lower Hutt, but yeah, it was a great place to grow up.
What? So in a way, you've you've you have gone there one step further, but I like talking about childhood because childhood shapes a person a lot, and good things and bad things, both ways. What were your parents' professions?
Yeah, so my dad is and was a builder. Um, he was always working on other houses, and so our house was constantly in a state of like there are more renovations needing to be done. But when a builder's finished with their work, they don't want to come home and do more work. So
Yeah.
we were always just kind of our house was a nice house, but there was always more things that needed to be done. I at times would live in the garage. We had quite a big house, but I lived in the garage as we hosted other people. They would often take my room, so that that was quite funny. But there were some benefits to living in the garage because I had my drum kit there,
I
so
see.
I was right next to my drum kit. And what else? My mum, she did a whole bunch of things. Like she would change jobs sort of every second year. But one of the notable things was that she ran a cafe for a while, and the cafe, she's not working there anymore, but it's still up and running and doing really well. So she's a really great cook.
I see. So you grow up with good food in your belly.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Um, so how was your how is how was child? You grew up in the 90s.
Yeah, I grew up in the 90s. I was born in 92, so I'm a Barcelona Olympics baby, as I like to remember it. Uh, yeah, 90s, remember all that sort of that music. I think the formational music at that time for me was all the sort of emo and pop punk stuff as it was coming through
Grunge.
early to mid 2000s. You know, Green Day,
I
Fall
see.
Out Boy, Foo Fighters, Red Hot Chili Peppers, all that sort of stuff was the stuff that I grew up with
You
and
grew up
enjoyed.
with, yeah. Um, wh- what um, what are your interests in school?
Yeah, in school, my interests. So outdoorsy stuff. I really enjoyed fishing and diving and exploring in the hills, as I
So
said
not
earlier.
school.
Uh, at school, uh, I like, the subjects I enjoyed were the sciences and maths. I also picked up a few languages at school, but since then I've learned that actually the best way to learn a language isn't at school. It isn't via books. I mean, that might work for some people, but some of my friends went overseas and picked up languages so much faster with full immersion. So I sort of dropped that kind of passion to learn languages until I actually decide to move overseas and do it that way.
I
And a
see.
few other things, I was interested in computer games as well, being a big nerd, and
What did you
yeah,
play?
playing sport with friends and stuff from time to time.
Ah, you played outside, so you were an
Yeah,
outside kid.
yeah.
I mean, you said you had oceans and the ocean really close. So your childhood, was it more outside or inside?
Well, there were definitely times of both. As I've grown older, I have become more and more of an inside person. Sadly, I just spend so much time on my computer doing work and board games tables inside. But I would like to think of myself as an
No,
outside
no, no, no.
person. I do enjoy the occasional walk and stuff,
I
but
see. I see.
I need to do
No,
it more often.
I was talking about your childhood. Your childhood was more
Oh,
outside or more on the inside.
a bit of both. Bit
A
of
bit of
both.
both. Um, did you have any siblings?
Yeah, I've got one sister.
On sister. So, did you in your childhood did you play? You said you played sports. Did you had any interests in games? Did you have any games?
Yeah, so yes, I definitely did. I didn't know that many games, so the games I enjoyed were just the ones that I knew, and so the ones that I liked were Risk. We would often play in the holidays. Would set aside a whole day to play with my cousins and my dad and a few others. Those were really memorable experiences because you're sitting around the table strategizing for hours, and so I have really really fond memories of that game. I know that a lot of people don't like it, and the mechanisms maybe are a little bit dated, but it will always have kind of a place in my heart. That game, and Chaos Order, which was one of the designs I co-designed with my friend Zach. That was kind of our love letter to Risk, love letter to our childhood memories of Risk, and making a more modern, more
More,
strategic,
yeah, yeah.
more Euro-y version of that game.
And with your sister? Did you play? Did you play with your family a lot?
Yeah, so my sister maybe wasn't as much into games. I think when playing games with her would have been a little bit younger. We would have played games like Uno, Skip Bow, Pick Up Sticks, those sorts of games, which I always enjoyed, but I wanted a little bit more strategic crunch as I grew older. So playing chess with my dad was also another memory, especially the day when you finally beat him and he wasn't going easy. That was definitely a good moment.
And so did you have let's call it game nights or game days? Were those did they happen a lot, or they were just from time to time? Or
Yeah, it was really only from time to time, and it would have been in the holidays when we were away at a beach or a beach house, and we didn't all have computers or cell phones. So, when it was raining, we would either go and rent a movie and play it, the
yeah,
VHS, or we'd get out a board game and play that for a day or so. So it was kind of those special occasions. It wasn't a regular thing.
that's a regular thing. Yeah, but that got you into gaming practically. So you, where did you go to high school?
I went to Hutt International Boys School. It was in Upper Hutt, which is maybe half an hour or 45 minutes from where I was growing up. So there was a bit of a bus ride every day, but it was a great school.
Only boys?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
That was, was that a wonderful time? No, no girls whatsoever.
I mean, we didn't mind it. We got up to mischief, made a whole bunch of friends, and for the most part, we kind of just focused on our studies rather than any kind of romances and stuff, which might be the case at some public schools. Yeah.
And during high school, did you play any games, or maybe you played sports or played something else? What
Yeah,
was the?
so high school was the period of really getting into video games.
I see.
RuneScape was one, Age of Empires 2 was another, and League of Legends was a third. And each of those games probably took up 2 to 3 years of my life. But I made a lot of friends doing that. That was something we loved to do together. We loved not only playing these games, but we loved talking strategy before and after. And we grew to really enjoy the debrief. And I think that's something that carried on through into discovering modern board games with these same friends. We realized there's a lot of overlap, there's a lot of crossover, strategizing and talking strategy after the game and our experiences
I
after the
see.
game.
I see. Go on, go on. I'm not interrupting you. You say say all the things you think about.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah. So talking strategy after the game, I think it's a way of kind of reliving the experience. I think it's something that maybe males, but maybe just humans in general, it's something we've always done. When they hunted the deer, they would sit around by the campfire talking about that shot that they pulled off. And I think there's something about it which is just so satisfying. And a good board game does that. It's not only a great experience while you're in it, but afterwards you're thinking about, oh, remember that play and what would I do next time? And I think that's actually a huge part of the hobby for me is the discussion and the thinking. It's the space the game occupies in your brain
yeah,
before and after,
yeah,
not just during the game.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so you've played lots of, as you said, lots of video games. From high school, where did you go study at university?
Yeah, I studied at Victoria University of Wellington. I studied Bachelor of Science, majoring in chemistry, and I managed to complete the degree and all of that. But I think it should be revoked because I can't remember anything. It's just, if you don't put it into practice, if you don't actually do the things that you've been learning, it kind of just goes.
Of
I'm
course.
sure if I spent more time on that stuff, it would come back. Like it wouldn't. It's probably not completely gone. It's probably hidden in some archive somewhere in my memory, but I don't have access to that archive currently. So I've got a degree, but it doesn't really mean that much. It just meant that there was a period of time where I applied myself. I did hard work and study, and there's
You,
something to show for it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But in a way that shaped your brain that shaped your brain in a certain way. It creates certain connections in your brain studying
Yeah.
sciences generally. So it informs what you're doing today one way or another because board games they have some science underneath. Board
Yeah, they
game
do.
design
Yeah.
has some science underneath. When did you discover, let's call them modern board games, which are Risk is, I would call it a classical game.
Yes. Yes.
When did you discover the modern Euros, let's call them like this, or maybe modern American games? Like, I don't know.
So there's kind of a few genesis. There's kind of a few starting points, and it's a combination of all of these things, right? There was the realizing that these are a thing, and then there was the stage where it became my own hobby, and those were two sort of separate points. So I was in a band playing drums, and there was this guy called Shem Phillips in the band, and he played guitar. Great
I
guitarist, great
see.
songwriter. Yeah, you might have heard of this guy. And he just had this little hobby of his. It was this little side hustle where he would design board games, and the early ones were very basic card games, mostly board and card games that were fun, and they were kind of more in the style of those classic games you're talking about, like some roll and moves and some like card take that style games and stuff. I don't think he would mind me saying that. Um, but one day he with that little hobby, sorry, I'll start again. With that hobby of his making games, he realized that there was this niche of modern board games, and so he discovered them and he started playing them. And then I noticed that his games that he was bringing forward to us to test were getting better and better. So he was obviously picking up some tools from these games that he was playing and applying himself.
So wait a second, let's not skip it. So he discovered modern board games. Did he draw you into playing modern board games?
Yeah, so I'll continue
Okay.
the story. So he started playing them. I wasn't playing them at that time. I had played some of his other games.
I see.
And then he showed us some newer games that he was working on. And there was this one that absolutely blew my mind. It was called Raiders of the North Sea. And I was like, wow, board games can do this. The amount of decisions I had on my turn, the look, the aesthetic of it, which just blew me away. The different strategies and stuff like that. So that was a game that kind of introduced me to modern Euros. And then as I played that and I enjoyed that, Shem showed me some other games that he'd been playing, some maybe that inspired him. And that was one of my stepping in points to the hobby was trying out that game. That helped me to realize, wow, there are some really amazing games out there.
So Raiders was already published when this happened?
No, it was playtesting.
I see.
But I think he had got art for it already. I'm pretty sure. So we played with the completed board art and things like that, and a bunch of the Viking characters that had already been done for shipwrights.
I see. Now, before we go on with this story, I want to come back to another story. So you are playing in a band. What kind of a band were you playing in?
Yeah, it sort of defies genre, or there's just many genres. So perhaps it was melodic post-hardcore, or post-rock. It was alternative. So or progressive even. We had quite a few like instrumental bits. Lots of our songs were progressive in that they didn't often repeat themselves. There was a little bit of screaming and some breakdowns, but mostly clean vocals. So we would play at some hardcore shows, and we would be like the pop band at that show, and then we'd play at pop shows, and we'd be the hardcore band at that show. So we never really fit in, but it was always quite nice. People enjoyed it. It changed the dynamic of whatever show we were at. There weren't any bands that were like us at the time. So
he did not speak about this a lot. I mean, or I don't remember. I haven't rewatched the interview. I have a problem of watching myself. I'm a bit like
yeah,
Johnny
me too.
Depp. I'm a bit like Johnny Depp. I can't watch myself. Do you still play today in the same band, or it's just
No,
playtesting?
we lasted for about 5 years, and we did 2 EPs, so 2 6-song albums, and one full length 12-song album.
I see.
And we did 1 or 2 kind of New Zealand semi tours, and then we called it a day. So it was just quite time consuming, and we every second weekend we would have a show, and half of the band lived about an hour up the way, so they had to keep coming in to the city. So anyway, we call it quits. I don't need to go too much into that, but we call it quits. I'm not still playing in the band. I'm not really drumming very frequently anigh, but I'm sure that it would come back pretty quickly if I were to set up my drum kit.
I see. So if Foo Fighters comes to you with an offer, do you think about it?
No, I would be terrified and would not feel like I'd be good enough for that.
Okay,
No.
let's move back to board games. So you started playing modern board games. Which was the first one outside playtesting for Shem?
Yeah, so this is the second Genesis, the second kind of starting point for this hobby. And I think the hobby really starts for a lot of us when we buy our first game. We show that level of investment and interest that we're willing to spend our cash on this thing. And if it's good, then we want to buy more, and then we start the second hobby, which is called collecting board games,
Yeah.
which isn't the same hobby, but there's a lot of overlap. So my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, she got this voucher for a bookstore, and we went to the bookstore together just to see what she would spend that voucher money on. And I suggested actually that why don't we buy a board game and play that together? And we bought one called Pandemic, which is one that I think Shem had showed me before we bought it. So I think I had played it once, but we bought it and then we set it up one Sunday afternoon with my friends, and we played it back to back to back to back to back. We just kept playing it. We couldn't stop because we wanted to keep. Once we won, we wanted to raise the difficulty, and if we lost, we just wanted to get up and be stronger and beat it. So that allowed us to keep tweaking the difficulty to get in that sweet spot for us. And we loved the challenge. We loved being able to cooperate and work together. So Pandemic was that Sunday afternoon playing Pandemic maybe 6-7 times was really one of the starting points for me with this hobby.
7 hours of Pandemic, maybe more.
Yeah, it would have been something like that. Yeah.
That's a lot. So Pandemic was practically our gateway game in a way, let's call it like this. When that made you probably go further, look further, what's more into this hobby? What kind of a player made you or transfer? Did you start playing co-ops and then going towards, have you tried, I don't know, games like Arkham Horror or games which are more American? Did you go towards the Euro type games? What was your trajectory?
Yeah, I started, I went down the rabbit hole, right? I started watching all these reviews, lots of Dice Tower reviews, but also reviews from other YouTube channels. Just wanting to know, what are the essential games? What are the games I need to buy? What are the games I need to play? And I would listen to their reviews, what they thought about the game, and started to see if I would agree with them, if I would agree with their rationale. And then eventually I would land on 2 or 3 games that I would buy, try them out. And then after that, after doing that a few times, you start to understand what your tastes are and who you tend to agree with and levels of trust and things like that. Yeah. But at first it was lots of things. I bought Robinson Crusoe because I wanted an even heavier, meatier, strategic cooperative game.
Co-op, yeah.
There was Shadows over Camelot, which we actually had a blast playing.
Yeah. Which doesn't work with 2.
Really? No, it doesn't work with 2. No. But a bunch of my friends would play. We would get together after church. We'd play that game a lot. And sometimes we wouldn't be friends after that game, and sometimes we would
because of the traitor.
But one of the other like big ones was Cosmic Encounter.
I like that game.
We just I know it's a very divisive game. It's a really polarizing game.
It is.
But we fell in love with that game. We fell in love with all the player powers, all the crazy chaos in the game, and it played out pretty quick. We could get games done in about an hour, so we could play multiple times. Just what that game amazes me, and it shows you really what board games can be.
Yep. I call it a party game for gamers. For me, it's the best party game for gamers.
That's right. Yeah.
So you went the rabbit hole, as you said. When did you start thinking, I might want to create some of these games?
Yeah, this was really a happy accident. This was not part of the plan. But eventually started playing a few Euro games, worker placement style games, and I mean, who doesn't like worker placement? When you're first starting out the hobby, it's I know that there's a lot of them now, but there's something that's instantly very engaging about them. There's a good amount of clarity. Like, I've got these meeples, they can do things for me. They go to this spot, I get this thing. They go to this spot, I get this thing. And then the tension around, I want to get there first. I don't want to be blocked out of that. So that was really compelling. That was such a cool mechanism. But that whole thought of me being blocked out of a spot, that led to an idea one day when I was at work. I was just sitting there at work and I thought, what if someone could capture other people's workers from a spot at a worker placement game? And what if when they rounded up those workers, they could then put them in prison and something would happen for them? So that was the initial idea. And this was, I took my lunch break and I started just fleshing out this idea a little bit more. So I came up with this idea, which I now call worker investment, which is basically a type of worker placement, which is an architect's. And all you do on your turn is place one worker at a location. And if the first time you go there, you get to activate it once. The second time, because you've still got a meeple there, you get to activate it twice. The third time, say you go to the forest, you've got 3 meeples there now, you get 3 wood. And so it's this kind of cascading thing where you're building up all of these engines at different spots of the board, and players have this really exciting amount of workers. They've got a big amount of workers just there, which is kind of cool. Like, why don't we give players 20 workers rather than 4 or 5? And why don't we say there's no actions in the game where you increase your worker pool, which is this kind of maybe stale thing that a lot of those games have, where it's all about getting your next worker out to increase your number of actions. Instead, this is far more about where you want your workers to go and where you're sort of focusing on. And that worker investment mechanism, coupled with a capture mechanism to slow people down and not let it just cascade to infinity number of resources, they really coupled together nicely. So I drafted up just these few ideas. I got home that night and just thought, if I'm going to do something about it, I got to do it now while it's fresh, while the ideas are hot. I scribbled it down on a whiteboard with whiteboard marker. I took out pieces from a whole bunch of different games. I might have only had about 5 to 10 board games in my collection at the time, but we had the ships from Cosmic Encounter. There were 20 for each player, and they could stack nicely, so you could see sort of how many you had without taking up too much space on the whiteboard. I took pieces from, maybe it was Raiders or some of Shem's games, and we just played this game about collecting resources and then spending those resources to build buildings, which I know that theme is not inventive at all. It's not unique. No. It's not a fresh idea, but the way that you took those actions was fresh. And we found that players' turns were really, really fast. The game flowed super nicely. And there was a good bit of player interaction and tension around your workers and getting rounded up and put into prison. And so, that game actually surprised me that it was kind of working. It was, in all other areas, it was very rough. Like the balance and the different paths and the types of resources, all of that sort of stuff was rough. But eventually I showed Shem, I said, hey, I don't really want to step on your toes, mate, but I've designed this game. I want you to play it and just let me know what I can do to improve it so that me and my friends can enjoy playing it together. Just get your sort of expert advice. The goal was not for him to publish it. It was just to get advice on how to make this a more fun experience for me and my friends. And after he played it about 2 times, he let me know that he was keen to publish it and work on it with me. And then since then, we've been working together ever since. We loved the development process of that game. And I think we work really well together as a team. So, yeah.
I agree with that. Hello, Malik, and welcome.
Hey.
Nice for you to enjoy. I hope it's good that you're enjoying the conversation. So now let's move to another question, which is, so from that moment on, you just said I'm a game designer. Do you have any other profession? Do you do other things?
I'm very involved at my church. I'm on the leadership team at my church. I was the pastor just for 2 years, an interim between different pastors. And that's why in Viscounts there's a little card with the pastor called the pastor,
Yes.
and it's got my mug,
Yeah,
my
yeah,
smiling face
yeah.
on it. That's me. So when I was designing Viscounts, I was part-time pastoring at my local church, which is very small. Everyone lives within a kilometer. There's about 30 of us there. I'm no longer the pastor there. I'm full-time game designing, but I am still involved volunteering in the leadership.
I
Yeah.
see. So now let's talk a bit about designing games. Usually, when you start, you have no idea how much of a hassle it is to design games. Eh, did you did you know it's going to be hard? Do you have any idea? Now, is it hard? It becomes easier as time goes by.
Yeah, it's interesting. Some parts come so naturally. Some parts are easy. Like Shem has this little saying. He just says expansions are easy, because you've already come up with the core systems, right? And
Yeah.
so it's just about refining and improving and adding to the gameplay experience. And you sort of ask yourself the question, what would I want to be able to do in this game that I can't currently do? Like, what's a player fantasy? What are the things that I would love to be able to do that I can't do? Um, and so yeah, there are certain parts that are easy, but there are also parts that are hard. And I like to put it that there are a few things where there's like a continuum or a spectrum, and there's no like perfect spot on the spectrum, but it's all just finding the right spot for your tastes and hopefully for more people's tastes. So I'll give you an example. There's a spectrum between streamline, like rules minimalism, and balance. And ideally, you want to have a game that's streamlined as much as it can be for the depth that you're wanting to create for
Yeah.
players, and you want it to be as balanced as it can be. But there are certain things like, if you had a computer that was designing a board game, they might value this card as a 2.3, right?
Yeah.
It should be worth 2.3 points based on the stats. Well, we're not going to do that. We're not going to make people count up to the 0.3. So we have to do some rounding, right?
Yep.
So one of the ways is we make this card worth 2. Another way is that we make this card worth 2, but when you get it, you get an extra coin, and that coin might be about 0.3 of a point. Or another way is say, no, actually, let's triple the amount of points that everyone gets everywhere. Let's just inflate the point economy. And if we times it by 3, now 2.3 times 3 is going to be 7. And so now it's really well balanced, but we've got these really big numbers that are escalating. And so there's always this continuum around streamline and balance. And you kind of got to decide where you're landing on things. There are certain powers and cards in games that I want to tweak, that I want to add more rules to or nuance to make the game more balanced. And Shem will say, no, that's too many rules. We need to refine it. So then we have to be okay with little points of imbalance for streamline's sake. And finding the right spot on that continuum is always about making concessions, and it's always about compromise.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's definitely a hard part of game design that not many people actually think about, I don't think.
When they start, probably. Um, so, do you after you talk a lot about Shem? Do you enjoy the cooperation of designing a game, or you like more designing all alone?
Oh no, I much prefer designing with Shem. I much prefer designing with other people um, as well. Like I don't love designing games alone. I really there's a few reasons why. One I think is just kind of my nature. I'm more of an extroverted person. I love to share the process with someone. I love to share excitement for them to encourage me, but me also to encourage them. I also like the fact that different minds and different experience brings different ideas and refinement in different ways. So all of those things, I think it's more enjoyable. I think it makes for better games. And with Shem in particular, I think now we really understand each other a lot, and there's a whole bunch of trust there that we've done a lot of work, and our design process now is pretty is pretty streamlined in that we can make a game and come up with a game and get it really playable in about 2 or 3 months. Whereas at this, when we started, it was about 9 months to a
Oh,
year to make it
yeah.
a good game. So just the fact that we've managed to really
You
work on our chemistry and work on
you
the things we understand about each other and games
yeah.
has been really cool.
You streamlined the relationship also.
Yeah, yeah. I've always got his voice in my head now as well. It's saying things like "That's too rulesy" or "I can't show that with icons."
um, so we talk about streamlining. How how much can you streamline in the end? How streamlined can you get? How streamlined can you do a game?
Yeah, I'm probably not the person to ask that. I tend to add things to games. I tend to add more paths for players to explore. And yes, you can add depth to a game without rules, and that would be a game like chess hasn't got too many rules, but
Yeah.
it's got an insane amount of depth, right?
Yep.
But I'm not that smart that I can add that much depth without rules. So when I add depth, I'm adding breadth as well. I'm adding more paths to explore, but then I do want it to be deep and not just broad. So creating ways that these paths can interconnect and relate and feed back off each other. And then you've got all these different synergies that might be, you won't be able to see them all each game. So I'm definitely not naturally a streamliner. I've sort of become more of a streamliner out of necessity. But you'd probably want to ask someone like Shem or Rainer Knizia or people, even someone like Jamie Stegmaier. There's some people that are really all about streamline that, and they do a really good job of that. And for me, I see it as an important thing, but not the most exciting thing. I want more paths to discover. I want more player interaction and agency choices to be made. So those are the things that I kind of lean towards adding, with streamline just being this kind of essential thing that I guess I should do a little bit of.
Um, so, do you do in order to discover all of this and in order to know that it works? How much playtesting do you do for a game?
Uh yeah, we do a lot. We playtest our games now on Tabletop Simulator most of the time, and every day or every second day we're probably playing one of our new games, and
I
we
see.
spam it a lot. And I'm the kind of playtester that I don't just try to win necessarily. I try to do the best that I can, so I guess I am trying to win, but but I'm trying to like hit the walls. I'm trying to like try the very, very extreme strategies. You know, maybe all I'm going to do in this game is one action. If it's possible to just do one action this game and keep repeating that same action, I might try that. I'm going to try this really, really out of the box stuff, because I think that if something like that is viable, it's actually really cool. It makes for a cool story. But you don't want that to be the best way to play it. You don't want it to even be super strong. You want that kind of strategy to be available
Yeah, yeah,
only in some circumstances with
yeah.
the right card pairing, and for players to have to really try hard for that to work, because then that creates a better moment and a better story with an extreme strat. So I'm trying extreme strategies. I'm trying to make them actually viable in our games, which I don't know that everyone has that as a design philosophy. But I want those extreme strategies to be viable, but I don't want them to be broken.
Yeah.
So a lot of the playtesting also happens in my head as well. Like I'll just be thinking about the game, thinking about different paths and strategies, and kind of doing a little bit of balance just intuitively as I think about it.
Um, do you have a core group of playtesters and
Yeah,
use
yeah,
them a
we've got a
lot?
core group of playtesters online. There's about 10 of us that play. We've got people in all different time zones via our Discord and TTS. But we also have a group of friends who would play test stuff physically as well. We haven't been doing that as much as we did, say, with Circadian's First Light, Paladins, and Architects earlier on in the process. But we still like to get it out and play it at the table as well and see what their opinions are too.
when there is this usually all companies have developers. Do you design more, Shem develops, or is it you are your own developer, or do you let him develop more the game? How does it
Yeah,
go?
that's a really good question because the two things get conflated and they're actually different skills.
Yeah.
Um, I am both a designer and a developer, um, but I'm more naturally a developer. And I think the same is true of Shem. I'm not the kind of guy that's having a new idea every week. I probably have about two or three good ideas each year, like good new ideas for a mechanism. Um, so that's actually a fair bit because if
Yeah,
if
it
if
is. Yeah.
if half of those become games, that's great,
Yeah.
you know. And we do try to innovate. We try to actually create new mechanisms to add something to the conversation. We don't want to just
Yep.
repeat what's
Yep.
been
Yep.
done. We want to learn what's been done, and we don't want to reinvent the wheel. So if there's things that make sense that we've learnt in the board game hobby, let's do those things. You know, things about card market stagnation. We don't need to reinvent the wheel around that. We can use some of those tools that we've got, but we also want to make sure that we are innovating. So Shem and I are both designers, but I think both of us are actually developers as our core skill. Shem is a developer looking at it from a publishing standpoint. He does a really good job at that. So what's the best way that we can show these icons, componentry, making it intuitive to understand what's going on when you're looking at it, the UI, and then also he develops really, really good solo modes and streamlining, taking rules out where possible. And for me, with my development, I'm about balance and adding more paths and agency to the game, hopefully more interaction. Yeah, a wider range of experiences that are available at the table from each game, memorable moments, things like that. So we're both really developers, but we do design because it allows us to develop.
Yeah.
We love developing. So if we design, then we get the opportunity to develop that design.
I see. So you find it easy to move the hats around? Yeah. Are you? Do you find it easy to cut things because if you're a developer, you need to cut things from your design
Yeah.
in order to make everything more streamlined, more easy to understand, more easy to play, and things like that. So, is it easy to cut your own things?
Sometimes I let them get cut, but I'm kicking and screaming. No, don't take this away. But other times I realize the necessity. And I think it's helped when you play test a game and players genuinely aren't getting this thing and it's just not providing the experience or the feeling that it was created to add. And when you actually see that it's not doing that, then you realize, okay, it's not actually working. Let's cut this thing. So I've definitely become more conscious of needing to refine and cut things out of the game. And I think I've had more of that lens in the last few years than I did when I was starting.
Oh, so you talked a bit about your design philosophy, a bit more about your design philosophy around not talking, answering my questions. What talking about how do you start? You start from theme, go to mechanisms, or start from one mechanism and then let's see how we can find the theme for this.
Yeah, I mean, each game is actually different. Each game is its own beast, and it's always some sort of blending of the two. With Architects, clearly it was just the core mechanism. That was the hook. That was the thing that got me started, and I ran with it. But because we do these games in worlds, we've got trilogy.
Yep.
We try for the three games within a trilogy to kind of be telling this overarching story. And so as we get on through those games, it becomes more and more starting with the theme. So a great example for that is Scholars, which is, if I can do a little plug, it's on Kickstarter right now. I hope you don't
Yeah.
mind. Scholars of the South Tigris. I actually started working on that game via reading a few books and watching documentaries about the Abbasids, realizing this golden age of medieval science, Islamic science, and they they had this period called the translation movement, where they sent out their different people to go and collect these scrolls, bring them back to Baghdad. They built this amazing library repository place where they stored all of the world's knowledge, and they translated these scrolls into Arabic. It was maybe the first time something like this has even been done, collecting of all this knowledge and putting it into one language, from Greek, from Chinese, from Sanskrit, from all these different places and tongues. And that's a really amazing endeavor. And it lasted quite a while. Eventually, the Mongols came and burned down the library. I don't know why people burn down libraries. They should just leave them alone. Yeah. But yeah, so that game purely started with the theme. And then, so how are we going to make this theme, which could be considered kind of dry, collecting scrolls and translating scrolls. It could be unexciting for people. But for me, it was exciting because it was grounded in history. It's not a historic simulation at all. We cut corners, we make abstractions, of course, but it's grounded in history. And that led to the idea of this translating mechanic, where players are hiring these scholars that speak different languages. And if some of the languages are very far away from Baghdad, from Arabic and Persian that they spoke, then there probably isn't anyone that they know that speaks that language. But they might know someone, they might meet someone that can speak a language they can speak, a second language they can speak. So, for example, someone might speak Arabic and Persian, and then someone else might speak Persian and Chinese. So to translate the scroll into Arabic, they would go from Chinese to Persian, Persian to Arabic.
Yeah.
And this idea of using different translators and sort of forging these paths into different languages, I thought was quite a novel one, and it allows for some cool player interaction, and it really brings out that theme of translating the scrolls.
I see. So you talked a bit about this. What I want to talk a bit about expansions. Do you think about expansions when you design the game with expansions in mind, or you design the game and then we will see what we're going to add later?
Yeah. If you asked me that 3 years ago, I would have said emphatically no. We do not design with expansions in mind. We design the best game we can right now, and we're going to release it to you in the box, and this is the best way to play the game, and we're not holding anything back from you, right? But since then, so that's still, I still kind of agree with that. But since then, we've released a lot of expansions, and we kind of know that they're inevitable at this point, that we're going to want to come back to a game and revisit it. Working on an expansion is really cool for us because it's an opportunity to revisit a game that we'd worked on. We play these games so many times. We grow to love them, and then maybe we get a little bit sick of them, perhaps, because we played them so much.
Yeah.
And then once we're done, we move on to the next game.
Yeah.
And we move on to the next game. And when do we ever come back to this thing that we created? And so the expansion development is an opportunity for us to enjoy it again and to see the game again with fresh eyes. A great example is Paladins. Paladins was such a fun game to develop because it was this thing that we created, but we didn't understand. Like, I don't know how to score well in this. Like, here's how these systems work, but I don't actually know what a good score is. And so the first 4 or 5 times Shem and I would play, we didn't score high. We scored, 30s, 40s. We might have broken 50. And then eventually, as we played the game more, we didn't change too many mechanisms, but we changed our strategies and we started to understand the game. We started to almost solve it, not solve it, but definitely develop mastery in the game. And it was still fun and it was exciting making it pop off, but we kind of lost the excitement of improving at the game, And then it became about like trying to adapt to what was out there and play the best game we could from the randomness that the game offers,
Offers, yeah.
rather than actually trying to get better, because we had got to this point where we might have peaked, not perfected the game, but got to a sort of a plateau at the top. So designing the expansion was an opportunity for us to feel awful at the game again, to have to rediscover and relearn how to play, and to have that experience of like, we don't know what's good again. So that was kind of like a selfish thing. Give players more paths to explore and let them develop mastery with these paths again. Yeah, I'm not sure if that answers the question, but that was the experience for Paladins. Oh, yes, the question. I'm just rambling. But the question was, do we develop with
Yeah.
expansions in mind? Since then, with the South Tigris, we kind of know that we will eventually be adding expansions. So we've started thinking a little bit about, if we were to do an expansion, what would it be? And trying for it not to be essential, so we're not holding anything back.
Yeah.
But with the Wayfarers, just this is a little bit of it for that people can probably figure out themselves. But with the Wayfarers insert, there's space for some more tiles. There's space for some more cards. We figured that we probably would add more tiles with an expansion. We'd probably add more cards, and so we future-proofed that big box so that it would hold an eventual expansion, so that people don't have to buy another big box, because that's not something that we really wanted to do, but we sort of ended up having to do out of necessity, because our boxes were so small, and the expansions simply wouldn't fit in them, and people want it all in one sort of package compiled. Yeah.
I gather that you haven't watched my thoughts on Wayfarers.
No, I haven't. No.
If you haven't, you'll see because I touch on that on box and what's inside. But as I said there on my thoughts, I think Wayfarers as a base game, I think it's probably one of the best base games you have done yet. So whatever
thanks
comes.
For saying that.
Whatever comes, it's just added on. I don't think, maybe more cards, a bit more variety here and there. So now that we have gone to that, I have one more question from this part, which is, what is fun to you?
What is fun? Oh, wow. Like, what things are fun, or what does fun mean?
What is in gaming? What is fun to you? Because fun is different for different people. A lot of people, for a lot of people, fun is sitting at a table and drinking for a drinking game. For other people, maybe playing a family game. For me, sitting with my head on the table and saying, I could have done this better. Different things for different people.
All of those things. I enjoy most types of games. I think fun is sharing experiences and moments with friends at the table. There's the puzzly moments. There's the strategic sequencing kind of moments. There's the moments of outplaying your friend and then giving them a little cheeky remark, when there's games with mind games or combat or stealing the thing that they wanted to hire. Those moments are fun. There's also moments of cooperation in co-op games, but also in 2v2 games. I'm thinking some trick-taking games. The moment when you and your partner are in sync, that is just such a satisfying moment. That's a bond that you share with that person. The Mind is a great example of that. I mean, some people say it's not a game, it's an activity. I don't mind. I've had some really good experiences with that with non-gamers, and there have been occasions where we all feel like at the table we're in sync, we're on the same wavelength, and that is really immensely fun. So there's lots of things that I find fun. Sometimes it's laughing and playing a take that game. I don't want that all the time. I don't want that even half of the time, but sometimes that is the right occasion, and it can be a blast.
So you have talked a bit about being an extrovert. So you enjoy spending time with friends practically. This is what is fun to you, spent
Yeah.
creating those moments.
I think the other thing is, like, I know a lot of people say this, but also being a nerd, like feeling smart. If there's any way that a game can make you feel smart, whether it's some cool sequencing or chaining of some combos or outplaying someone, there's lots of ways, but feeling smart is cool. Or even just improving at the game, like we had with Paladins from game to game.
What is can you talk as fast as you can a bit about how your day goes by, a day in your life?
Yeah, a day in my life.
How
Yeah, I
how
get
how
up,
a
I have
day
coffee.
sorry, how a day of a designer goes by?
Right. Okay, so I'll skip all the boring stuff. It'll be I'll jump on Discord. I'll see if there's any new reviews or any new questions on BGG. Sometimes I'll answer them. We'll see if there might be a playtest in the morning. I've got some European friends and that I'm designing games with, or that we're just playtesting games with. So it'd be my morning and their evening. We might playtest a game, and then Shem and I will be in conversation often, and we might have a game in the afternoon with our American playtesters. So we kind of we need to sort out our time zones. So
Yeah,
mornings for
yeah.
with Europeans, afternoons for with Americans, and most of the time I would spend on developing games that are already in works. But I try to set aside a day a week or moments of my week to try and think of new mechanisms for games. So whether that's going for a walk or sitting down at my table away from my screen with pen and paper with some components out, or also I like to go to a cafe from time to time and try to come up with new mechanisms or the start of a new game. Um, but yeah, most of my time would be spent playing our games, thinking about them, refining them, developing them, and implementing changes in scripting on Tabletop Simulator.
I see. And then you go to bed.
Yeah.
um, what is your most played game
Oh, my most played game
outside
is,
your own, of course?
yeah, so definitely including my own would be Architects. I've played it about 150 times since
It
since it
was
was
released.
published.
Oh, okay.
So that's I don't log my plays when we're playtesting, but 150 times since release was a lot. But some other most played games are The Mind, Cosmic Encounter, Pandemic. I've already talked about all of those games already. Games that are easy to get to the table. Terra Mystica I've played a lot on Board Game Arena. That's my favorite game. Yeah, code names, like, there's interesting thing about, we talk about replayability in games, and I want to write up this list of correlations between, correlations for replayability, the factors that make up replayability.
Replayability. Yeah.
And
Yep.
and I
Yep.
think the biggest factor with the highest amount of correlation with replayability is game length. So The Mind or Codenames, they're not my favorite games. They're not even in my top 50 probably, but I've played them a bunch because they're short. They're easy to play. So we talk about replayability. We talk about, like, oh, let's give them, 15 different tiles that could be set up in this one spot. And that might be about the seventh thing on the list of replayability. It's not the thing that makes me come back. There's other things well above that. There's interaction, there's the
Yeah.
length of the game, there's like player powers. That thing is quite far down, I think.
Yep. It's always you can make a game replayable only if you add certain interaction between players, and then make a game about what players do, not what the game do, or what the game does. It's
Yeah,
always
yeah,
about what's between players and how players can change a decision from game to game, any decision
yeah,
from
that's right.
game to game. And I think
Yeah,
Martin
I agree.
Wallace does that very well. Yeah. So, and now you said your favorite game is Terra Mystica.
That's right. Yeah, I've got my. You might see behind me.
Yep,
These are my
I
these are my
saw it.
top 5 games. So Terra Mystica, Gaia Project, Cosmic Encounter, Rex, or Dune, and
Yeah.
Sidereal Confluence. And interestingly, 4 of those games are space themed. And I don't think it's because of the space theme. I'm not mad about space themes, but I guess I kind of like them. But the big thing about those 5 games is they, one, all have asymmetry, like as a big part of the game.
Yeah.
And some of them are Euro-y and some of them are mirror trashy, right? But they all have asymmetry and they all have good interaction between players. Like the power system in Terra Mystica and the way that trading posts or trading houses are cheaper to upgrade when you're next to someone, and then you're going to give them power, and the way you can fight over hexes. I just love that. So yeah, those are my top
So you
games.
enjoy more Terra Mystica than Gaia Project?
I do, but I think of them as quite different games. So I love them both in their own way. I don't think they actually fill the same space for me. I know a lot of people would hear that and think that's weird, but Gaia Project is more about the exploration of the different tech and just kind of enjoying exploring the researchers and tech and the more of the puzzle that comes out each game and the ways you can min max that puzzle. Terra Mystica is more of a known quantity. It's more of an interactive area where there's lots of mini races and jockeying for tempo for things. So I love that side of it. It's that kind of knife fight in a phone booth kind of feel.
Do you have a favorite designer?
Probably Shem. Yeah, but
I know he employs you, but come on.
Yeah, I mean the designers of Cosmic Encounter also designed Dune.
Yes.
And 2 of those games are my top 5.
And Peter Olotka and I forgot the other one.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them.
There's 2 of them. Eberle, Richard Eberle or something like this, right?
Yeah,
and Peter
yeah, something like that. So I don't know if I haven't tried any of the other games, and I'm not sure I would love all of them. But the fact that they've done those 2 masterpieces for me is, it's great. So they've got to be up there as well.
Yep. And now this is the end of the first part of the main part, let's call it, of the interview. Would you want to add something that I might not have asked you?
No, I think we're good. I've talked a lot, so let's move on.
It's pretty good. So now I'm going to end with my questionnaire. This is a questionnaire which derives from Marcel Proust. There are 2 bigger questionnaires, and this one was made by a French, believe it or not, a French broadcaster. His name was Bernard Pivot, and it was then taken by James Lipton, who did the Inside Actor Studio. And I took it from him without any shame, and because I like it and I think it's very good. And the first question is, what is your favorite word?
My favorite word?
Yes.
Pass. I guess people like this is going to sound really egotistical, but I think everyone likes the sound of their name. So Sam, when it's kind of flattering when people use your name rather than just like, hey, mate. I don't know. That's just a placeholder answer.
So you like the word Sam?
No, it's not necessarily the word. It's not necessarily the best name. It's quite a common name, but just hearing it, you know that it's you. It's just people are talking to you.
Yeah, of course. What is your least favorite word?
My least favorite word. I mean, there are a bunch of cuss words that I think are vulgar that I don't like, that I won't share.
Okay. What turns you on creatively, emotionally, or spiritually?
I think in all of those ways, it's walking out in nature.
I see. And what turns you off?
If I play a game and I see that it's very derivative, that it's basically just borrowing everything from other games, and a little bit of that, even a lot of that is fine, and people enjoy that. But for me, that turns me off. There have been some great games that have come out recently that have been very, very well acclaimed and received that I could not stand because creatively there wasn't much that was being added to the conversation at all. So that turned me off quite a bit.
What? And now this is this is a good question to ask a pastor. What is your favorite curse word?
My favorite curse word. I mean, there's some good ones, right? There's bollocks and crap and I don't know. Those ones are pretty good.
Yeah. What sound or noise do you love? Drums.
What sound? Oh, there's New Zealand birds are amazing.
Oh,
I love there's a particular bird called tui, and you have to if you haven't heard their call, you just have to Google tui. So it's TUI, and they have something like 200 or 300 syllables, like clicking and humming and singing, and they're just amazing. So hearing those tui sing is a really cool sound.
I see. I have made a note here.
TUI, yeah. Listen to the bird call of a tui.
What sound or noise do you hate?
I don't like polystyrene.
Yeah.
That kind of grates, when it's coming out of a box. Like, yeah, not a fan of that
one. Which profession outside the one you already do would you like to attempt?
What would I like to attempt? So I've attempted pastoring, which might have been my answer, but maybe teaching. I think being a secondary school teacher could be quite cool.
I see. Which profession outside the one you already did you would not like to attempt?
Oh, there's so many. So many. What would be one? Retail, working in a clothes store.
Well,
God bless the people that do that. That's a great job. We're thankful for you, but it's not for me. I can't stand malls. I want to get out of them pretty fast.
I'm in that club too. But would you like to work in sewage?
I mean, that's a dream job. No. I don't think I would enjoy that very much.
So then you would pick retail probably.
Nah, sewage over retail, I reckon.
And my last question is, if heaven exists, what would you expect God to say to you when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Yeah, well done, my good and faithful servant.
I see. This was these were my questions for you tonight. Sam, thank you a lot for doing this. I hope you had a good time. I hope you felt comfortable here in my virtual gaming room on our virtual comfortable chairs, I hope.
Oh yeah, it's been a blast. Thank you so much for having me. And you might be the first Romanian that I've ever met. So it's really cool to be able to do this internationally. And I'm really looking forward to hopefully getting out more, coming to more conventions. It's really hard in New Zealand how far away things are. Yeah. And we've just had COVID recently. But I would love to meet more people globally that are in the same hobby. We all like the same stuff. And as I say, I'm an extrovert. So meeting more people is always a blast.
Yeah, maybe in Essen, because Essen is a good way to meet a lot of people. And usually this year I went. I will try to be there also. Last year, sorry, I went. I will try to be there also this year. It's a good way to meet a lot of people and lots of people who enjoy. You're not an odd bird there. You're not.
Yeah. Everyone's just like me. They just like the same moving pieces of cardboard and wood around a table for 2 hours, learning this very obscure rule set and agreeing to play by this obscure rule set for 2 hours. Yeah, we're all in the same boat with that one. So it's cool to have like-minded people to share that with.
Exactly. We're all weirdos there.
Yeah. We'll definitely come back to Essen. I've been once before. I don't think it'll be able to be an annual thing, but maybe once every 3 years or something. Would love to be able to go and have the opportunity to see Europe again. What a cool place! Like the number of countries that are crammed into the small area and the amount of history there, man. Just you can't go past a building in New Zealand that's more than 200 or 300 years old,
Yeah,
and the fact that
yeah.
like you walk a kilometer somewhere in Europe and there's going to be something like that is kind of mind blowing to me, just with the way that I've been brought up and the things that I've seen and experienced.
Yep, yep. Again, thank you a lot. I will. I'll kind of ask you not to close the conversation now to finish. We'll talk a bit afterwards. Thank you again for doing this, and hopefully we'll see each other in person somewhere.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thanks to the people that watched.
So this was the interview with Sam J. Macdonald, SJ Macdonald, as as you will see on boxes. I hope it was fun for you to see. I certainly hope. I certainly know for me it was a lot of fun doing it. I like to pick people's brains. I like to talk to them about games, about their lives, and how they reached this point in their lives. I hope you like it. If you like it, please like, share, and subscribe, because keeps the internet alive and keeps us going. And again, thank you, Sam, for doing this. I will finish as I always do. If you like what we do, also like, share, and subscribe. And as I've said, and if you can help us on Patreon, again, thank you. I will finish it with what it says here. It says in Romanian, but it doesn't matter. I will translate it. It says, play a lot, play loads, as you Brits say. Have fun, and until next time, bye bye, fine folks, wherever in the world you are.